when you clock in, you're sadly mistaken. You carry it into the workplace with you every single day, and it impacts your success, it impacts your income, it impacts your way that you approach work, how you interact with your bosses, how you interact with your coworkers, just a lot of different ways. So having been in HR for over 20 years, I was like, why isn't anyone talking about this? You know, HR, they want to talk about work-life balance and emotional intelligence and all these things, but they're just buzzwords. They don't really meet the rubber, you know, in the road together. And I think putting language around things and bringing awareness to individuals is really powerful. So parentification is kind of like that silent trauma. It doesn't have to have like this big explosive event, like, you know, you think how trauma and PTSD are. It's really quite innate, and a lot of people don't even know that they were parentified as a child. They just figure that was their childhood and they don't have language around it. So parentification can happen in divorce, and a female, you know, a daughter can become the lady of the house and take on domestic duties for her father, and, you know, just steps up to the plate in that way. Boys are now called the man of the house. Now that daddy's gone, you got to help take care of mommy, you know, and that kind of thing. And they're given that burden from small ages, from young ages. It can happen due to drug abuse and alcoholism. You know, when there are drugs and alcohol in the house and the parent is either intoxicated or recovering from, you know, being intoxicated, then the child is the one getting up and making breakfast and doing laundry and caring for the sick parent that's in the bathroom vomiting and things like that. It can happen with mental health issues. You know, if you have a highly anxious parent or a parent who is experiencing an active mental health crisis and they're not receiving the care that they need, it's often the child that will comfort that parent and be there for the parent. It can happen due to chronic illness or death in the family. Right now, my very best friend since I was 19 years old has Alzheimer's. She's 51. She doesn't know what day of the week it is. She doesn't know where her 12-year-old son goes to school. She hasn't been driving for quite some time, and it actually took a lot of work to get her diagnosed because she was so young. About 47, she started showing symptoms of this. And her son is being heavily parentified by the dad. This poor guy is in his 50s, caring for his wife, you know, working a full-time job, and raising a child and caring for his, you know, his spouse. So it can happen on accident. It's not that we have bad parents. We're not blaming our parents or anything like that. So for me, having grown up in, my parents were never married. There was a lot of abuse in the house. Some of my very earliest memories, and it gives me just cringes to think about it, is the noise of what the impact of my father's fists were on my mother's body. Just that thud, like it's visceral, you feel it. He murdered our pets on a regular basis as a way to emotionally abuse my mom. And my mom from this had a lot of drug and alcohol issues that she dealt with her whole life. She finally passed away at 44 from a drug overdose. I was 23, my baby sister was 16, that I had really helped raise. And my aunt, who's a child psychologist, would always say, you know, well, she's just, you know, she's Terry's spouse. I was her companion. I did what I could to make sure she stayed sober. I did what I could to make sure she was comfortable. Things were easy because when things get hard for her, life got hard. Praise the Lord, she knew Jesus. I mean, if it wasn't for her relationship with Christ, I think she would have died a lot younger than that. And I think the example that she gave to me is when she was in church and she was sober, life was easy, you know. But when she was in active addiction and relapsing, she would pull us back away from society because it was her dirty secret and we would kind of be trapped in the home. So for me, you know, growing up at 23 and receiving sole custody of a 16-year-old that was really pissed off in life, I grew up quick and I always had real big grown-up jobs, right? At 19 years old, I was a realtor. You know, that was the 04, 05 bubble. I was making money left and right. Life was good. Part-time job, full-time money, you know. And I surrounded myself with a lot of adults. I've often been called an old soul, you know, very mature for your age. You're so responsible. I sure do appreciate you. And there's a lot of cultures where children are parentified quite regularly, especially in low socioeconomic areas. When I went to Honduras recently and spoke in Honduras on a speaking tour, there was a lot of children that were working full-time jobs. They don't go to school. They have to work to provide for the family. So it's just a wide variety of ways that this can display. And it gives you a lot of strengths. I'm a self-initiator. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I'll figure it out myself because that's what I did for my household, from a very early age. Not much scares me because if I made it through that, I ain't worried about your business, So it makes me very brave and risk tolerant. So as an entrepreneur, it gives me a lot of assets that way. But it's also very crippling as well. I have a tendency to, speak out of turn sometimes because, I like things to be clear and understood. Sometimes not everything has to be said, right? It also puts me into relationships and allows things into my life that I shouldn't allow. I was in a business partnership for about 12 years with someone here in town. Some of you know him. And I joined the team during the recession. It's 2008, and everyone's getting laid off, and we're a staffing company. No one was hiring a staffing company. And there was a lot of things that happened in that office that were highly inappropriate. The alcohol use, the sex, all the kinds of things that I was exposed to, and I allowed it. And I look at it now and it's like, why did I allow it? It was because I was exposed to so much drug, sex, alcohol as a tiny, tiny child. I mean, I went to the dollhouse with my stepmother because she was a dancer, and nobody was there to watch me, so I'm hanging out in the back with a bunch of strippers, and they're putting feathers on my head and things like that. So for when men sexually harassed me, I didn't feel like it was harassment. That's just what men do, and you just really allowed a lot of it to come into your life. And it wasn't until I draw a line in the sand and said, I'm not comfortable with these things anymore, and stopped being his yes girl, that he, no longer needed me. And I was terminated from that position because I drew a line in the sand. So of all the things that I named, divorce, alcoholism, drug addiction, sickness, death, how many of you can identify in your own childhood how you might have been parentified a little bit and been given inappropriate duties and responsibilities? I see a lot of hands, a lot of nods. And what I really found out is working in HR, it's the really successful people that have had these experiences. It really is. It's your entrepreneurs, it's your business owners, it's your salespeople. I got very good at a very young age at identifying body language. Makes me a great interviewer. I know when you're lying to me. Now I've fortified that by studying neuro-linguistic programming and how the body physically reacts when you tell the truth and when you tell a lie. But when you grow up on the streets, literally, because we were homeless for a little bit, you had to judge someone when they walked in the door. Are they here to harm me, or are they a safe person to be with? So my talk today is really about bringing awareness on what parentification is. I want you to go and I want you to watch some YouTube videos about it and study it and see how you can identify different things in your life on adjustments that you can make, especially in the workplace, because you'll find your relationships with seniority and your relationships with co-workers is very heavily impacted when you start studying how it changes who we are. So, I lost my train of thought. So with all that said, does anyone have any questions about parentification or, yes?
So could you quickly say what would be the difference between a coworker and a manager, as you say they're both heavily impacted?
Yes.
But there are two different types of roles and relationships.
Yeah.
Could you quickly say the impact of?
Yeah. So there's oftentimes boundary issues with coworkers. You'll say inappropriate things, you'll do inappropriate stuff because you've had a lot of exposure to a lot of grown-up things. And so with the coworkers, you'll end up really making best friends with a lot of your coworkers, and then it kind of can become toxic or inappropriate. You really don't keep those boundaries. And it was always been hard for me as a leader with my employees or my coworkers to kind of find where a normal boundary is set, because I didn't have boundaries with my parents or really a lot of people in my life. And then authority can be very challenging for me because I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I've got it under control, you know. So it can make you appear a little combative, overly independent, you know. I think a lot of women leaders get called a bitch a lot because, you know, we draw that line in the sand and we do those things, you know, we say and do the same things the guys are doing, but for us women, and I think women have a tendency to be more parentified as overall, just because we are caretakers by nature, we are fixers by nature. And you'll find a lot of information online about marital relationships and who you choose as a partner. Oftentimes, parentified women will choose people who need to be fixed or saved. And they do it, and then they end up being silently resentful that they're now married to this man-child and having to take care of them, you know. But it felt good in the beginning because what we do defines how good we are. For me, being in HR, it's very natural and it's very satisfying because what is my love language? It is being of influence to other people's lives. Let me help you get a job. Let me teach you how to do this. Let me help you be a better boss. And so when I get to see that impact, I get happy. You know, it makes me happy because I feel like what I do impacts who I am. And instead of finding value in me as a human, as me as a daughter of Christ, I have to do things to feel love. And so oftentimes you get that savior complex. You end up over volunteering in organizations. You end up taking leadership roles because you're always just the first one to step in and become president of something. I'm trying not to make eye contact with like everyone in the room because I know a lot of you. So you have to watch yourself, and so I've had to be very intentional about my giving back. Yes, I give 500 hours a year. And I have to be careful about that because it's much easier for me to give and show up in that way and get that immediate gratification of dopamine than it is to go home to my family with complex issues, with transparency, with showing up. Like, I don't play games. I hate games. I don't play well. No one ever played with me. I was never really a child. You know, so I'm not playing no Scrabble. I don't enter any things because I'm a real sore loser, you know. And so, you know, I don't watch TV. I don't get a lot of jokes because I was so wanting to get out of poverty when I was young. I did everything that I always could. I never wasted time. I was always learning. I don't read for pleasure. I read for leadership. I read for, you know, just self-help, like all kinds of things. And so I don't get a lot of pop culture because I haven't watched shows, you know. So I'm not trying to be facetious when I only half laugh at your jokes. I'm just trying to act like I know what the hell you're talking about. So yes, so issues with authority, savior complex, things like that can really complicate and muddy the waters, you know, professionally for us. And so sometimes just the self-reflection on, do I need to do this? Why am I doing this? And for me, what they call inner child work was really a beautiful therapy for me. And so what that is, if you're not familiar with inner child work, is you journal because we're all children inside, right? I mean, we were all that little kid. And you journal as a child, and then you write back to the child as you would as a loving mother. And you do things in your life and you make decisions for yourself that you would want your own child to make for themselves. So having a 16-hour day because you're volunteering all over the place, would I want that for my daughter? No, I wouldn't want her to do that. That's running too hard, too fast. I would want her to slow down. So loving myself in the way that I would want my mother to have loved me is a really hard thing to do, but I have to be very cognizant of it. And I wish I could stand up here and say I have all the solutions and the answers and I'm gonna heal all y'all. I'm still broken, y'all. I'm still in the process of it. And honestly, I've parentified my own daughter because I had such a rapid upbringing. I expect a lot out of her. I'm like, come on, get it together, girl, you're 15. I was emancipated at 16. I moved out between my sophomore and junior year of high school. Was emancipated through the court systems. There's lots of people who move out, but not everybody goes through that court hearing. So I was a legal adult. So I look at her at 15 and be like, get it together, woman. You should be paying your own bills by now. You know? So I have to always be, and I drive her nuts. I won't play games with her. I'm like, I love you too much to play with you. You know? Come on and playing. Like, so it's hard to revel in joy. It's hard just to be, you know, and so I do dive into work hard and fast and volunteerism and giving back to the community and stuff. So really appreciate, you know, being asked to speak here because I think it's an important topic. Everyone wants to talk about self-care, but then like, how do we do it? And we do it by learning about ourselves and then seeing that stuff in each other. And if you are an employer, I would encourage you. Good employers know how their employees' weekends are. You know, how was your weekend? You do the small talk, water cooler, blah, blah, blah. Amazing employers know where that person came from. They know how many siblings they had. They know what their childhood looked like in a general sense, not in an inappropriate sense, but knowing where people came from will make you much more patient and tolerable about the funny little weird stuff that they do in the office. Because I tell you, there's a root to everything that we do. And it can be traced back to customs. I do weird stuff all the time. And my husband's like, why do you do that? And I was like, because I was poor. When we moved in together, he's like, why do you put cups in the freezer? And I was like, so I can use it the next day. Because you don't want to waste the water to wash it, you know, and I didn't. My mom, with her depression, never did all the dishes and stuff, so the sink was always like super gross, and I have a complete phobia of sponges. They freak me out. Ugh, there's just cooties in there, you know, because she let them live for far too past their expiration date. So he just thought that was so quick. And evidently not everyone puts their cup in the freezer at night when they're done with it, you know. Like, how strange is that? So anyway, does anyone else have any other questions about leadership or, you know, HR? Yes.
I want to go back to the parentification. This is actually something you and I have not talked about.
Okay.
So, in the research you've done and the work you've done, how do you feel, since this is a group full of women, that being parentified has put a situation where you're living in masculine energy and not able to truly feel your feminine energy, which if we all do, we're far more creative and successful?
Yes, yes. Well, obviously, I've been told many times that I have a very masculine energy. I've always worked in male-dominated environments. So I now have an all-female office, which is really fun. I enjoy, you know, that, but it is hard to kind of balance that and to soften myself. And as a wife, it's been particularly challenging because I truly believe I should be of service and support to my husband. And he's amazing service and support to me, and so he makes it really easy for me to do that with. But I was rough. In the beginning of our marriage, I was telling him what to do like he was one of the kids or an employee, and it really wounded his masculine energy because I was so dominant over him, you know. So, and he had a very caring, you know, loving mom that was a stay-at-home mom and stuff, and so he was kind of used to being cared for. So for him, it was quite comfortable. So it was an interesting dynamic. But for us females, we will often work in those male-dominated spaces because we're most comfortable. Because all these other chicks are trying to like cry and talk about their feelings, and I'm just like, I just can't with it. I was talking to my sister today. We were on the way here, and I was like, oh, I hope I don't cry on stage. I feel a little weepy today. I just had a death in the family, and it's my mom's death anniversary on Saturday, and we're burying my grandmother on my mom's death day, and I'm just like feeling a little extra, and I don't know how to like just sit and cry like for crying's sake. Like when I start to cry, I'm like, oh, cut it out, you know. Like, it's just so weird. Like, I have to pull it together, and it's like, for what? For why? I'm home, alone. No one's even here. Like, why can't I just do those things and let that kind of stuff out?
We should just group hug you and just make a circle around and let you cry.
Yeah, so you're right. It does show up as a very strong male energy, and I have to try to tone it down some and learn how to be feminine and not sexual. Because I was very sexualized as a child. I was exposed to a lot of things. And you know, I was groomed by my previous boss that that he don't hire ugly people. And the way you get that appointment is you show up like a certain kind of way, and you wear certain kind of clothes, and you act, and you go to dinner with men, and you know, compliment them and stroke their ego and stuff like that. I was told like with words, not even like unsaid expectations, that that's how you get sales. So being feminine and soft and not being overly sexual, you know, is all kind of a balance. Because we can get a lot of that, you know, from the world that we're, you know, and it's not to take away our sexuality, you know, but it's in the workplace, there really shouldn't be a whole lot of room for any of that. Yes.
I have an off-topic subject.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
You mentioned you have prairie dogs. The story of the prairie dog.
Yeah. So I've always loved exotics. I love weird things. I have an octopus as a logo, so obviously, you know. And if you want to know the octopus story, it's on my website. You can go and read it and check it out. So I've always loved exotics. And one day I was walking around a pet store, and I was like, what is this furry little cute thing? And he wouldn't sell it to me, which made me want it even more. And it's like, you must go and come back. And sure enough, I did. I went back and I did my research, because they're quite complicated creatures. They live in burrows, they live in families, they're very communal. It's not a hamster, you just can't set it and forget it and buy it a wheel and allow it to spin off into oblivion. But what I didn't know is the pet trade, you know, it's a whole thing. And so they suck them out of the burrows out west, and then they sell them to us out east because they're considered exotic. Hunters, they just pop them off like, you know, like rodents that they are out there. So now I do prairie dog rescue. I bought my first one from a pet store, and I didn't understand the pet trade. Just like I would never own an octopus. I would love to own an octopus. That would be amazing. But they're so intelligent, I would never want to do that. So if the Lord brings a rescue octopus into my life, I will be an octopus mommy then. And that would be very exciting. But I adore them. They have a condo. It's a Critter Nation double cage married together. It's about a $600 unit. They eat hay, and an interesting thing about them is they don't fully ingest the hay. They just eat the husk on the outside. So my trash men are like, what in the hell is this woman doing inside her house that produces all this hay? Like, because it just gets waste, you know, it's just waste at that point. It lines my backyard and my, you know, this. So if you ever see a piece of hay stuck to me, I always try to check myself before I go anywhere, make sure I don't have any hay in my hair or something like that, because it does travel. So they're adorable. Follow me on Facebook for pics and videos. Any other questions?
No, actually, I just Googled that because I had no idea.
Yeah.
Is this your 16-year-old sister?
No, that is my sister-in-law, so that is my husband's big sister. Yeah. So she was in town today. She travels a lot, putting down that mayonnaise and mustard on the street, so she's in town right now. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much.